Okay, so every day there's a new chapter. You write them. Every day there's a new story. You're all on top of them. As we sit here and have this conversation at 1:18 Eastern on Friday, September 26th, because this thing changes, sands through the hourglass. What is the very latest on Kirill Kaprizov? We saw the non-comment comments by Craig Leipold.
Yeah.
Paul Theophanis, the agent, and his client saying, flattering offer, but still not enough for the caramel secret here. What's the latest with Kaprizov? I know dated reference. What's the latest here with the player and the team?
Yeah, I mean, unless something has changed today, and as you mentioned, I mean, things could change with one phone call, right? One flight by somebody. One decision by Kaprizov could change everything, but it's been at a standstill. There have really been, other than when Paul Theophanis made an impromptu surprise appearance at the opening day of training camp, and he met with the assistant GM for a couple hours in front of all of us. There really hasn't been any conversation since Kirill turned that deal down during a meeting with Bill Guerin and Paul Theophanis a couple Wednesdays ago. So, we'll see where this goes. I think the Wild are still hoping that Kirill is going to be the one that sort of drives this and sort of instructs Theophanis to get it done. But, what we don't really know, other than Kirill giving the cliched, I like Mini, is does he really want to be here? He was offered the richest contract in NHL history and so far hasn't taken it. So, are they just because Craig Leipold had been so public both last year at this time when he met with the media and a couple of weeks ago at the Grand Casino Arena official opening celebration, the newly named arena, and saying that he felt they were close on a groundbreaking contract? Are they just trying to get more money from the Wild? That's the type of thing that we don't know. So far, it doesn't seem like being really given any instruction if he wants a shorter term deal. I don't think structure is at all an issue like a lot of people have surmised. The Wild have made it very clear that they're willing to do essentially whatever he wants from a signing bonus standpoint or a structure standpoint, certainly a no move standpoint. But right now, it's a concern, and they're just hoping that they're not going to negotiate against themselves. So that's the one thing that I seem to, have a sense of, is that they don't seem to be inclined to just keep on giving him more and more and more. So maybe it's as simple as, everybody's trying to wait for one domino to sign with all these incredible players that could potentially be free agents next summer. We'll see.
He's the domino, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. and that's the thing.
Like, the dominoes.
Yeah, like Wild fans seem to think like, he must be waiting for for McDavid to set the market. I don't think he wants McDavid to set the market because it's very clear that McDavid, if he resigns there, is going to go and try to do something that is going to make it team friendly.
Let me jump in on there real quick. I'm glad you got us to this point here. A, not negotiating against themselves, so I don't think we should expect another offer here from the Minnesota Wild. And B, I'm with you. I don't think he wants Connor to set the market. I don't think Eichel wants him to set the market. I don't think any of these free agent and pending UFAs want Connor to set the market, because the needle that Connor is trying to thread here is take care of himself, but also take care of the team and leave money here so Stan Bowman can get them over that Florida Panthers hump. Now, you can make the joke that Niko Mikkola may have taken care of all of that now with the injury of Alexander Barkov, but still, I don't think that Kaprizov wants McDavid to set the market at all, because he's looking to do what's quote unquote right for him and the team. I think maybe the only way you call the bluff is do you really want to be here? Here's 20%. If at that point you say no, then you have your answer.
Yeah, that is actually 100% true. If you keep on upping your offer and he keeps on saying no, then we know, and then you just got to ask him for a list of teams. But to Greg's point, he is the domino. I think everybody else is at a standstill because they are thinking, wow, is this guy going to sign for $17 million? And suddenly Eichel and Kempe and Connor and all these guys, Panarin, are going to be thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm no longer a 11, 12, $13 million player.
One of the things I was curious about, Russo, from your initial report between you and Joe Smith about the contract stuff, I think you wrote that there hadn't been any discussion about a shorter term deal or any maybe appetite for a shorter term deal for the Kaprizov side. And I mean, that, as we're all trying to read the tea leaves on what this guy wants to do, I mean, to me, that's the biggest leaf, is the idea that, if you offer him the richest contract in NHL history, he doesn't take it, and there's been not salient discussion about a shorter term deal, then could it just be that he does not want to be in Minnesota any longer?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing because it's funny because he's got, when this contract kicks in, he's 29 years old. He did miss 41 games last year, so I actually think that it'd be a good thing for the Wild to try to sign him to a 3 or 4 year extension as opposed to go 8 years, because we all know that at 34, 35, 36, we just lived it with Parise and Suter. They're not going to be the same players, so it also puts you in this window that you better win early in that type of contract. And so I thought that a 3 or 4 year deal would make sense, but the Wild seem to not want to go there, and it sure seems like Kirill doesn't want to go there. So that I don't know. I mean, I just don't know where this is going. I think the Wild are putting just a leap of faith that this is the agent doing the hard, what Paul does when he works hard for his clients is trying to basically hardball the Wild here. And that at some point Kirill is not going to want to risk playing in the season and getting hurt and all that type of stuff. But that is and again, I'm not claiming to have all the information. The one thing that I will say, since that leak happened a couple of weeks ago, is the Wild and Kirill side have been essentially silent on this. So we've had to do a lot of digging in different methods to try to get any sort of information. So I'm not claiming that I know absolutely everything to this exact moment, but the indications we're getting, and just the fact, I mean, you all know Craig Leipold. He is as affable, and not that he wasn't affable yesterday when he talked to the media, but he is so genuine and enthusiastic and everything about anything, any topic whatsoever. And so for him to suddenly button up on this one, you just sense that now they are starting to feel the pressure inside the organization and getting absolutely nervous about this.
I can, and I feel the same way about Craig Leipold. Like it's a delight having an owner that's coming out at the beginning of every year, and it's like, oh, today's going to be awesome. I'm going to get 8 different stories. They're all going to be interesting, and I'm writing the Christmas card right now to Craig Leipold. I can remember when I was doing 32 with Elliot, we had Dubas on, and we asked him about the Nylander and Matthews and Marner, and his money quote was, "We can and we will." And I wonder if, part of that sort of haunted him a little bit. Do you think that perhaps Craig Leipold, I don't know that that'll come out and say that he regrets it, quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But do you think that he regrets saying, like, look, no one's going to offer him more. We can offer more money. We can offer him more term 1 year ago.
Yeah, we obviously asked him that yesterday, and he says he doesn't regret it, and he thinks that things have been misunderstood. But the one thing I will say is, and I've known Paul Theophanis for 27 years, he is a great negotiator. He's a hard-nosed negotiator. And I do think when you start to, every contract the Wild have ever done so far with Kirill, the previous 2 have been problems. And so I don't know where they thought that this one was going to be any different. And when all of a sudden Paul Theophanis is seeing an owner saying, we're going to give him as much money as possible, I'm sure deep down he's like, I bet he said to Kirill, like, we're not taking anything right now at that first meeting. So we'll see. I mean, look, I don't blame Craig at all for this. He said what he wanted to say. He fulfilled that. He offered him the richest contract in NHL history. And so far it hasn't been taken. And the fact that it hasn't been taken is to me the biggest concern here, because they're just hoping that it's Paul playing hardball and not Kirill playing hardball. And the reality is that, look, there's 32 great markets in this league, and he's got the full leverage here with a no move clause. And if he's starting to at all have any doubts about the future of the Wild, if he was not enthralled with their moves this offseason, if he just thinks it'd be cool to live there, he's got that opportunity this offseason when the cap's going up, and anybody would be wanting to have him on their roster.
Yeah, negotiating with the Infanos is like negotiating with the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. Like, it's not a very you're not moving the guy. You're not moving the guy. But I want to, Marek had the audacity to evoke Elliot's name on this podcast.
My goodness,
he's been making noise about there being some level of tampering involved here, and the idea that Paul and Kirill might have an idea of something being on the table that has them so enticed to not accept anything from the Wild. What do you read into that?
I know that the Wild are definitely worried about it. And if it's going on, they'll try to deal with it. All I can tell you is, it doesn't even need to be tampering. It could just be, assumptions. I mean, all good agents look at other teams and try to figure out, all right, who can offer the most money, who would want to clear space for them. it's very clear that Kirill Kaprizov is going to be a wanted man if he ever gets to market. And there's definitely teams out there that would put out the brink truck for him. Carolina is definitely one of those teams, whether they're floating anything or not. I mean, they're a team that absolutely, we saw it last year with Rantanen. They want to get a big game fish, and they'll figure out a way. That Dundon would try to do that. But there's a million other teams as well that would probably, obviously cap space isn't infinite. But you make some moves if you could try to get Kirill Kaprizov. So I don't want to, start accusing teams of doing that or Paul from doing that or anything like that. But I think that there's just an assumption out there that they probably have some good intel. And that's that is the fear. The longer, that was my fear all summer when it just wasn't getting done July 1, and that a couple of days before free agency when Bill Guerin started essentially warning the media publicly, like, don't freak out if this doesn't happen July 1. But the longer you wait, you also give them the opportunity to just gather more intel, and you also give now Kirill the opportunity to look at free agency and they didn't do this, or they could have gotten this, or then Kirill starts to just even look at other opportunities and start to think about maybe wanting to leave here. And so, to me, time is not a good thing here, guys, because, if he's not signed by opening night, if he gets off to a bad start, if the team gets off to a bad start, Zuccarello, his best buddy on the team, is not around right now because he's injured. To me, it creates more drama for an organization, as you guys know. I mean, we all know the history of the Minnesota Wild. They can't afford that. I mean, this is an organization that right now, with a fan base that's anxious to see this team go on a run, and he is the end all be all to that. So, it's to me, if it's not done by opening night, this is going to get wild. No pun intended.
And that kind of leads us into, I'm glad you got us there, Mike, because it kind of leads into another thing that I think a lot of us have been wondering about. Let me frame it this one way. I think we're all big fans of late comedian Mitch Hedberg, and he had a great line about wearing turtlenecks. He said, wearing a turtleneck is like getting choked by a really weak guy. But at a certain point, it's a great line. It's a great line. But I wonder, at what point does this turtleneck around Bill Guerin start to get a little bit tight here? It can't be trade deadline. It can't be okay, now this is really uncomfortable. At a certain point, decisions need to start getting made, and I can't believe that they'll let this one sail till deadline.
Yeah, especially because this is one of those moves where you need time. Now, I don't want to get make news here and all that type of stuff, but if it were me and I was Bill Guerin, I don't even think you ask for the list yet. I think you start. If it looks like it's going nowhere, I think you have to be the one to start initiating. I don't even think he needs to initiate. I think teams have already started to reach out to him and say, if this goes nowhere, just remember we'll be interested. I mean, obviously we know one team that suddenly is going to go into LTR today Kirill would probably would love to go play for. But if I were Bill, I would start having those conversations and try to figure out what the best possible offers are with multiple different teams, and then at that point, you go to Kirill and say, all right, where are we? And here's what I got. And then you make your moves. But look, I've covered this team since 2005. I lived the Marian Gaborik situation here. That was Craig Leipold's first year as the full owner of the team. He bought the team the previous winter. It was his first real season. And that August, they offered him a 10-year, $80 million contract, which is what we've reported. So I've sort of made it fact. But that's what I remember it. That's what I remember it being. I think Marian sometimes doesn't like that I've made that fact. But then, 2 games in the season, I remember this like it's nothing. We go to Atlanta. I go down to Florida. We're at a practice at Office Depot Center at the time, and he's playing sewer ball and gets hurt. It was the beginning of Cal Clutterbuck's career. Cal Clutterbuck came up and basically never left in Game 3. But so Game 2, he gets hurt. Between Games 2 and 3. He doesn't come back for 2 months, exactly 2 months. He plays 4 games before the Christmas break. And next thing you know, after the Christmas break, he has hip surgery with Dr. Philippon in Vail. And he comes back after the trade deadline. So 3 weeks after the trade deadline. So he became untradeable. He lights it up. He had like 10 or 11 goals in his final 11 games. And then all of a sudden, Doug Riseborough gets fired. Jacques steps down. Chuck Fletcher takes over. And now they want the contract back. And, he had just played, 15, 16 games that entire season, and Chuck was not about to give him an $80 million deal. He goes to the Rangers on a $37.5 million deal, and the Wild, get nothing for him, and they sign Marty Havelat on a 5 or 6 year contract. So I guess my point is they don't want to live this again. Regardless of the injury, they just, to lose Kirill Kaprizov for nothing would be absolutely devastating for this franchise. But the problem is, in the last year of his contract, they gave him a full no move. So he does have all the control here if he's not going to sign.